So, last time I worked on the Mini, I got started on the very tedious process of wiring the car. Now, this car only has an engine harness, and that's it. All of the body wiring, which includes the headlights, brake lights, turn signals, gauges, wipers, etc., it all needs to be made from scratch. Now, I've somewhat streamlined this process by purchasing a pre-wired fuse box. This fuse box comes with every fuse wired to an 8-foot wire, so all I needed to do was cut and route the wires to my various 12-volt systems. However, all of these systems require relays and switches, so that adds in another level of complexity. As far as wiring jobs go, this was the most involved one I've had the pleasure of working on, and it was also the most boring. Organizing wires is not as visually seductive as installing turbos or smoking Nissans, so you'll have to bear with me as we get this job knocked out. I decided to start with the tail lights. There are 4 components to these lights, so there's a little bit of wiring to do, but it's pretty straightforward. Alright, so we got one of our Mini's tail lights, and it's a pretty simple circuit system in the back, circa 1950s. So basically what we're going to do is cut these little bullet connectors off and install our own plugs, and then we'll mount this up, and then from the inside we'll put the other side of the plug, and then we'll wire it all up to our brake switch, and then we'll have working brake lights and turn signals. See this shit? This is as professional as it gets.
Make the sturdy, very stable, great condition. $20.
I mocked up the lights, only to realize I didn't have nuts small enough to get them on. Yeah, that sounds weird. So, Richard and I jumped in his RX-7 and choo-chooed our way to the hardware store. That's such a ridiculous noise. What the hell? Once we got back, I secured the lights, grabbed a battery, and gave them a little test. This is it. This is the moment of truth. Okay. It's gonna go by. Job's done. Yeah. Right, so all the stuff you guys have seen so far was from early spring. The Supra was still the full-time project back then, so I only got in about 1 workday on the Mini. But I'm back in the car and getting stuck into some more wiring. Here you'll see me wiring ignition 12-volt wires to the fuse box, and then wiring in a relay setup for the radiator fan. Like with any wiring, all this is stripping, connecting, heat shrinking, and then repeating, so I won't show it in too much detail. Just know there's plenty more wiring to do. My good buddy and fellow Mini enthusiast, Karl, came over and decided to tackle some of the problems up front. The main thing was that the lower control arm needed to be adjusted out further in order to bring our camber and caster closer to spec. Also, there was a gnarly torn CV, and the axle nut was missing a very important tapered washer. The first step was to pull that old axle nut out, which required a strong yet tender touch that only Karl could provide. Then the caliper came off, along with the rotor/hub assembly.
Good catch.
Happens all the time.
Does it?
Yeah. After that, the coilover was disconnected, and we detached both sides of the upper control arm. This was so we could swing the whole hub assembly out and pull the axle out of its place. The axle was in great shape, considering it had 0 miles on it, but the outer CV was torn completely, likely due to carelessness by the person that installed it. After that, we began lengthening the adjustable hind joints on the lower control arm to get it to a more reasonable place. The way it was set up before allowed for nearly no camber or caster adjustment, which resulted in a super wonky alignment. Here you can see Karl spinning the entire hub assembly to lengthen the bottom joint. It would be easier if we separated the lower ball joint, but I can't find my ball joint fork, and you guys know as well as I do that looking for something in this garage is basically useless. Karl eyed a good setting for the lower arms and then started reassembling the whole unit. With the bottom arms set in a good neutral place, we can use the easily adjusted upper arms to fine-tune our alignment. While we were down here, Karl noticed that some of the hardware for the steering arm, which is the piece that connects the hub to the tie rod, was damaged. Since we needed to make a trip to the hardware store anyways, we pulled the hardware out and took it with us. There are a few cars available for us to take, but I think I know which one you guys want to see.
Oh my lord. Been a little while?
After we got back, we started buttoning up the hub, but then we realized that we were missing some parts. So we jumped on Mini Spares, ordered some parts from England, and then went to the back of the car to hit some more wiring. This is like the most fun thing you can do on a car, right?
I would say like easily top 10 if you start at the bottom.
Karl and I worked well into the night, cutting, joining, and routing wires, till the point that we were so tired that we actually began splicing together brake and turn signal wires, so that's when we decided to call it a night.